The Seattle Seahawks take on the Dallas Cowboys Saturday night prime time NFC football. Russell Wilson, Dak Prescott. Zeke versus Carson in the power running game of the Seahawks. Of course, the great linebackers of the Seahawks versus the young great linebackers of the Cowboys, and the clapper himself, Jason Garrett, takes on the gum-chewing extraordinaire, Pete Carroll. It's going to be a fun one. Both of you guys are fans of both of these teams. So Cowboys for Dylan, Seahawks for Kevole. I'll let you guys start it off. Let's go with the road team first. Kevole, why do you think the Seattle Seahawks will beat the Dallas Cowboys on Saturday?
The way that I look at the NFC is it's two tiers. You've got the Saints, Rams, and we'll argue about where the Bears are in this. And you definitely got the Cowboys, Seahawks, and Eagles in another one. And you could argue where the Eagles are in this. But I think it's there's in a lot of ways, it's a really even matchup between two teams that play very similar. They like to run the ball. They like to play really tough defense. You've got Chris Richard as the passing game coordinator in Dallas. You've got Zeke, Elliott, and the Dallas Cowboys can run. The Seattle Seahawks can run. You mentioned in your preview, Mitch, that the last time that we played each other, the Seahawks ran for 102 yards. They just kept running and running and running. And I think the Seahawks are going to be a team that's going to be very patient. I don't think that they're going to be necessarily worried what the score is or how many yards that they got. You look back at that game against Minnesota, that Monday Night Football game. Yes, the stats were ugly. Russell Wilson threw for 74 yards that game, but they weren't worried about it. They just played their game. That's what the Seahawks do. They just play their game. They're not worried about whatever is going on. I think an underrated fact in this game that I think that people are not paying attention to is Jerron Reed, I think, is going to, with Frank Clark, going to cause a lot of problems for the front seven of Dallas. I do respect the Dallas Cowboy offensive line. I think that that's going to be a very good matchup. And I do respect the Dallas Cowboys linebackers, and I would argue that I think for position, one of the areas that I would give the Cowboys an edge is in the linebacker crew. I would argue that the Cowboys linebackers are better than the Seahawks linebackers. Even though the Seahawks have Bobby Wagner, I think the Cowboys depth-wise are better. I think to me what this is going to come down to is the offensive skill sets of both teams. And I think that, yeah, they'll let Zeke run. And I think Amari Cooper will get his catches, maybe, maybe not. That kind of depends. He got a little frustrated last week. We're not talking a lot about that because Antonio threw a ball at Ben, but he got a little frustrated last week. And I think but I'm not scared of anybody else on the Dallas Cowboys. Where I think the Seahawks are going to be able to throw Chris Carson and then pace that with Mike Davis and then toss something to Tyler Lockett. And Doug Baldwin is healthy in this game. So I think, and then Russell Wilson versus Dak, I think, is a big edge. And I think Pete Carroll and Jason Garrett is a big edge as well. So for me, the way that I look at it, I think this is going to be a really great matchup. Good game. But I think at the end, I think the Seahawks experience, and I think the overall Seahawks depth on offense is the difference. And that's why I am picking the Seahawks to win.
And Kevole, you did forget one thing. You did forget about Rashad Penny's 30-plus yard run where he runs backwards through the line, across the field, and then up the field. You forgot about that one.
No, that's usually a Russell Wilson
The 30-yard run that's like 65 yards.
That's Russell Wilson, and Rashad Penny does attribute to that.
Okay, so we have one guy for the Seahawks. The Seahawks fans taking the Seahawks. Not a big surprise there, but a nice preview, Kevole. Very in-depth. Dilly Vanilli, you're the Cowboys fan. Are the Cowboys going to win? Are they going to win at home? Are they going to win in the playoffs? Or are they going to lose to the Seahawks? What's going on?
All right, well, we got to talk about this. First of all, if you guys watch all of our previews for our playoffs, watch every one of them. We all made one. So just shout out to everybody here. Second, I did say in the video that the Seahawks were going to win. Maybe it's because of my prediction that the Cowboys could win if I picked the other team. We're going to put that to the side right now. Let's talk about the in-depth kind of preview that Kevole had for the Cowboys side. The Cowboys are 7-1 at home. That's a huge advantage. If this was a road game, I would be much more scared of the fact that we're playing the Seahawks. But it's a very competitive matchup, and the Cowboys, one of the best things they do is play at home this year, which hasn't been the case usually in Jason Garrett's tenure. But this year, it's somehow worked. Dak Prescott over Russell Wilson is not a chance. Russell Wilson is by far the better quarterback. You'll see my comparisons of every kind of position tomorrow and which team is better for this game, so you guys can see that. But Russell Wilson's going to have the advantage there. The run games for both teams are very interesting. You got basically a three-man powerhouse with Chris Carson, who was 5th in rushing yards this year, surprisingly enough, 5th in rushing yards. He's going to do very well. And Zeke, who was, I think, the leader of that offense, he's going to have to be that leader, that focal point on offense to make sure that everything gets held down, whether if it's in his run game with this really solid, always close to 100 yards rushing. A lot of times he gets that mark, and it's always a good indicator of what can happen. And then you've got the offensive line for the Cowboys and the Seahawks, which are very interesting. The receiver groups definitely got to give the edge over here to what the Seahawks do, because Doug Baldwin is always very good when he's healthy. And that perfect passer rating for Tyler Lockett, I mean, nobody's been able to figure that out for 17 weeks. Why not stop going to that well? So that's a very interesting thing. But Amari Cooper is going to have his moments in the spotlight. I think the defenses for both the Seahawks and the Cowboys are very interesting. The defensive lines are going to try to put pressure on both teams. We'll see if both quarterbacks, who are very mobile quarterbacks, can rush out of the way and are able to make some throws. Dak has been holding on to the ball for way too long. I think he has the most sacks accounted for just based off a quarterback, not because of the line pressure. So we'll see if both quarterbacks can move out of the mobility of the defensive linemen. The linebacker crews, Kev mentioned LVE and Jalen Smith are very, very good at what they do. But you've also got Bobby Wagner, the best linebacker in the game for the Seahawks. And then the secondaries, you look at how the Cowboys play is going to be very interesting. I think the biggest thing is coaching. Jason Garrett has never really showed to be a great coach, especially in the playoff times. And it always comes down to one big mistake or one crucial moment where it just doesn't come in the hands of the Cowboys. And we'll see if Pete Carroll can capitalize on that moment. As a Cowboys fan, I will be cheering for the Cowboys, and we will be live streaming this. Kevole and I will be on a live stream together on Saturday night to watch this game. So stay tuned for that one. But overall, it is one of the more even matchups we've got here, and I'm very intrigued by how these teams work together. I think it can produce a very fun game, but I'm going to go with the Seahawks. However, the Cowboys are 9-0 this season when they score more than 20 points. I don't even know how that's a statistical fact, but it's somehow if they get that 20 marker, that 20 plateau, that's the way to go. So I'm going to go with the Seahawks here as kind of one of my things, but I think both teams have a good chance to win, and overall, I'm looking forward to a really exciting game here.
I'm going to try and pick the pieces up for this matchup from you guys, because you guys laid out pretty well the matchups on both sides of the football. And when looking at this game, I think what makes it so interesting is that both of these teams, like Kev said, are so similar because, their defenses, they have similar backgrounds. First off, their defenses, Pete Carroll defense, Richard on the other side now, who used to be in Seattle. Maybe that does help the Cowboys passing attack. Maybe he gives them a couple of tips. Who knows? I do think that both of these defenses play similarly in just the fact that they're very simplistic, and they basically go out there and they say, hey, our talent's really good. We're going to go out there and try and do our thing, work hard, gang tackle, and outwork you and outplay you, not necessarily out-scheme you. And that's been a Seattle thing for a long time, and the Cowboys have sort of taken that. And I think this year they've been a lot better on defense than the Seahawks. I do think the Seahawks – they're an average defense, but I think the Cowboys are a more so an elite defense. When looking at both this game, mainly, to me, it all is about the running game. Whoever can run the ball more effectively is going to win this game to me, because I think both teams, that's their game plan. They want to run the ball. They want to establish that they can be more physical than the other team. And I think that team is going to be the Cowboys, just me personally. When looking at the last matchup, Ezekiel Elliott did have that terrible play in the game. But other than that, he ran for 16 times for 127 yards. That's 7.9 yards per carry. When looking at Carson, I understand the Seahawks run game has gotten a lot better since then, and they're number 1 in the league. But 3.2 yards per carry. And now coming into Dallas, that game was at home. Coming into Dallas, where Dallas is better at home as a team when they play, but they're also better against the run. They're 3rd at home against the run when compared to 5th normally. And the Seahawks are kind of middle of the road against the run. So I just think in that regard, when I'm looking at the game at the simplest terms, whoever can run the ball best is going to win. And also the Cowboys now have that Amari Cooper threat that they didn't have earlier in the season. I think this game is completely different. I do agree they have better coaching, they have a better quarterback, and that's what scares me a little bit, and some of the Cowboys kind of curses in the past where they just can't seem to not kick themselves in the foot. But I think the Cowboys, it looks like Crawford is going to play the game. Irving, I'm not sure. He's not practicing right now. The Seahawks are healthy. Doug Baldwin is maybe an X factor in this game because all season he's kind of been injured, but over the past couple of weeks he's played well. So look out for that. But I do think the Cowboys, just to me, they have a better defense. They can run the ball, I think, a little bit better in this game, and I think that's ultimately going to be the difference. I think it's a close, low-scoring game, and because these teams are so similar, it makes it a close game. So I'm going 23-16 Cowboys to win this football game. One thing I do want to say about the home record about the Cowboys for a negative point against the Cowboys, just in general in their schedule, they have played one really good team this whole season. So I want to see how that impacts them going into the playoffs. And when looking at their home, record, maybe the reason why they're so good at home is because of who they've played. I just kind of noticed that, but they have not really played anybody. The Saints, they beat them. That's a fantastic win. Not trying to take that away from them, but look at their schedule. They beat the Jags, they beat the Redskins. They did beat the Eagles, late in the season, but that was before the miracle Nick Foles stepped in. They beat the Giants. They've beat a lot of bad teams, and I think that's something if you're a Cowboys fan just to see how good is this team really. We don't really know, but just from what I've seen throughout the season, I think those key matchups, I'm going to go with the Cowboys, but I think it's really close, and I could see either team winning the game. So that's the Cowboys, the Seahawks. If you enjoyed this preview, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe for more NFL.